Hi, Melissa.
Oh, shit.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Melissa.
Thank you. Diane, can you hear me? You can shake your head if you don't want to turn your mic. Okay, thanks. I can see the TV. You can leave it on. That's fine. It's fine. No, they can see you walk by. It's fine.
Hi, Chris.
Hi.
They can tell them.
Hi, Susie.
Oh, just click off on just click off on the main thing.
Melissa, I'm making you co-host.
Okay, I will. All right. I see. Thank you.
Where's the camera? Oh, the camera's on your laptop?
Yeah, the camera's on my laptop. Are we? Oh, where's April?
I will search.
Oh no, give her a minute. She may
There
be.
she is. Oh. She texted me. She just asked, is the meeting at 5:30 or 6?
I think it's at 5:30.
I think you're right.
There she is.
All right, since we're all here, shall we call ourselves to order? Oh, look, there's the text now. I see.
We're on, yes.
Okay, I think that's a yes. Rita, you are muted. I don't know if you want to stay that way. You're welcome to. But okay. All right. So to review the agenda, we have Becky, is there anything we have to add in there between now and 6 when any additional items pop up today?
I need to explain why we have to redo. I should take this off. We
Thank
have to redo the appointment for the cemetery commission because it's an elected position.
Okay.
And we need the cemetery commission to participate in that vote. And I was not remembering that when we moved ahead yesterday.
Okay. So it's going to be tonight on our schedule, or will be at a later time?
Walter asked me to put it on for Tuesday night, and I've put it on at 5:40.
Okay.
Tuesday night, I think.
Okay. So we have to have a select board vote and a cemetery commission vote?
Yeah, it's a joint vote where you say your names and a roll call vote.
Okay.
Yeah, and it will only be until the elected elected term is ending. So it'll be on the ballot in the spring when we go back out to vote.
Okay. Do we know if this person is intending on running or no? Just too early to tell.
Susan Millinger, I believe she is.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Shall we?
For cemetery commission?
Yeah. Shall we open it up for public comment? Is there anyone here who would like to make public comment? Please raise your hand. Susie, anyone else? Okay, Susie, go ahead.
I just wanted to check if the meeting for the select board on Saturday at 10 a.m. was the right time.
I think that's the one from 9 to 10:30 with the
Okay,
school.
so what happened is that was, I'm not sure when the breakout sessions will be. And that was the earliest I could get it in. It might end up being at 9:30.
At
And
one point it was showing up as 7 p.m.
I
on
know.
Saturday.
Someone's gone.
well,
I think
we have this delightful software that controls our behavior. And if you don't do it, when I was trying to get the 10 o'clock back to 9:30,
I
and
see.
it wasn't allowing that, and it was defaulting to 7 p.m. So I had to delete that.
It was very confusing.
Yeah, and the breakout sessions are not really necessary to be posted, but how else does the public know? But
Yeah.
it's still,
Or the rest, or the people that are attending the meeting too. We would need to know the code and stuff, you know.
right, so I have to get that all, and there will only be one code for all three. And it's likely to happen, I don't know what time the breakouts will happen.
Yeah, I couldn't tell by looking at their agenda.
Yeah, so we'll, the Zoom will be open, and by 9, and so whenever they happen, they happen. We're doing our best to notify the public. And the main meeting was already posted for everybody, so.
Okay.
It's
Does that help?
to communicate the breakout sessions, which other towns don't do at all. So we're trying our best to do more than other towns are doing. It's just not easy to do.
No.
Other towns don't do the breakout sessions?
Well, they do the breakout sessions. They
Uh-oh.
don't post anything.
Oh, okay. I'm
Well-
sorry. I didn't catch that.
Our town has a lot of interest in this.
Yeah, so that's why I was trying to make sure people know where to go and
Mhm.
have access. So it could be as early as 9:30, potentially, but it's hard to tell with that agenda that we're not in control of.
But if people were to go on, just go at 9 o'clock when the regular meeting starts, then they'd be sure to be able to make it into the breakout room.
No, absolutely no.
Oh,
This
okay.
meeting is not a Zoom meeting for
Oh,
the
that's right.
public. The school, this is because there's already about 100 people on the Google meeting that's put up. It's televised over Amherst State, television, and that information is on the calendar. So you can go through YouTube, I think it is, and watch the meeting. So you'll know when people go into breakout sessions if you're watching the meeting. And for Shutesbury, you'll have a link online to get to the breakout session. Okay.
Sounds good.
And
I
the other really fun thing about our new system is I always used to just do a 3-committee agenda on one agenda because they're all at the same meeting.
Mhm.
In our new system, you have to do 3 separate agendas because they won't do it for more than one committee. So all of this is multiplied times 3.
Oh, so you can't tag like the FinCom or the school committee and have it appear as a meeting for them as well. Like you have to copy and paste the same information, but in a new entry, essentially, right?
Yeah, not just copy and paste. You have to do the whole process 3 times and it's already a 3-step process.
Well, thank you for doing all that, Becky. Shall we move on to the upcoming meet? First, did anybody else have public comment? Leslie or Diane at all? No? Okay. Upcoming meeting schedule. Becky.
So at this point, a couple changes since 2 nights ago. We're not having to meet on Friday because we've pushed back the meeting with AMP because they're not prepared. They still haven't sent the documents to us that are supposed to be talked about in the meeting. So I didn't want to chance it by having it on Tuesday because they have not been very quick to send things.
Okay.
So on Tuesday, the 9th, we're going to have a regular business meeting and then spend the rest of the hour and a half to talk with the police.
Okay.
Talk about the police. So
Great.
that's a good change that we'll have more time to focus
Yeah.
on that
That's great.
and not meeting Friday. So solar questions, I've tentatively pushed out to the 16th. I'm not sure if they'll end up there because of we don't know the contents of their documents yet. So we're not, I don't know when we'll get them, but tentatively we'll spend the time, some of the, like a half hour before the all boards meeting with AMP, if we have information to review with them.
And that's the 16th, right, Becky? I'm just adding this to my,
Yes, it is.
making sure these are on my calendar. Okay.
And if that doesn't happen, that again is a piece that we might have to discuss again on the 9th.
All right.
To figure out a final strategy.
Was there another one I was thinking of? Maybe it's just the one on Saturday.
Yeah, because we had talked about one on the next Friday. That one's gone.
Just updating my calendar real quick.
So that we've eliminated the 14th. I think that was the 14th.
All right, perfect. I think I'm all up to date here. All right.
I think it was the 12th, Becky, right? It was Friday, this coming Friday. Oh, no, next week. I'm so mixed up. Where are we?
I know, that's why I pulled my calendar out to
Oh
make
my
sure. I had
God.
Right.
I
everything.
pulled mine up and I still can't figure it out.
On the 8th, don't forget, we have an emergency management meeting too. If you guys.
There is also a capital planning meeting that night,
Which
And-
night is that, Becky?
Monday,
Monday, the 8th.
and
Okay.
there's a planning board meeting. So capital planning starts at 5:30. I'll probably be late to the emergency management meeting.
All right. I plan on attending emergency management, so I take notes if anyone needs anything.
Okay.
Rita, do you know your schedule yet?
Sorry, I have background here. Michael? Yeah, so we're leaving Thursday, the 11th, and then coming back on the 21st. And I should be able to make the all boards meeting. I just don't want to commit till we're out there and I know what's going on.
Mhm.
What potentially you're coming back on what day? The
We're coming back on the 21st. So we're going from the 11th to the 21st.
And are you,
We're
Fine.
flying.
okay, so you'll be back on the
Yeah.
21st. Hopefully.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's a Sunday.
Yeah.
It's school vacation week, I think.
Yeah, I think it is too. I know. It was
No, well, I
tricky.
don't know that the people will be traveling in the same way
Yeah.
they normally would anyway.
Right. Okay, and as you have noticed, we don't have Linda here tonight.
Yep.
I guess I better volunteer to take some minutes,
Okay.
unless anybody else wants to.
I don't think I have paper.
And I don't have a pen.
I have paper. Okay, and
Do we want to review solar questions, Becky, or do you want to, was that just the AMP update you just gave us?
that was, I had hoped to have documents ahead of that.
Okay.
To share with you that we might have had some questions about, but
Nothing.
my question, I guess,
Okay, no, that's fine. What about annual town meeting dates?
so Grace is working it backwards. I'm hoping to do it like the first week of June. First or
So like the
second
5th?
of June. Yeah, either the 5th or the 12th.
Okay.
So Becky, how does that affect elections then?
That's what Grace is working out.
I see. And so we assume that the state of emergency will still be in effect, so we'll be operating underneath the governor's current order? Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because he has to allow us to have, I mean, if they're not going to allow remote town meetings for us, which they have not to date, we need the flexibility to be able to do it when we can count on the weather being somewhat friendly to having an outdoor meeting.
Right. Okay. So basically we'd do the same setup as we did last year.
Although it's earlier in June, so
It's earlier,
won't be as
yeah.
hot.
It could snow.
And we did
Or
get,
it's snow. Good point.
yeah, and we'll probably still need a large tent.
Yep.
And porta potties. We might get away with just one. I didn't see them overrun.
I didn't either, and I think one probably be okay.
That'll save some money there.
Also, I just as a when you're out and it's warm outside, your body doesn't process water quickly when you're out in the heat. So it waits until you cool off and you're inside. So,
Unless you get,
so what my thing was one should be. What'd you say, Becky?
I said, unless you age.
Okay, yeah, I
Don't
suppose.
serve chili. Just don't serve chili and you'll be fine.
I love chili. Thank you, Chris.
Not aging.
I have to look forward to that when I age because I'm a camel when the heat's up. So
There's a lot of things.
okay,
So
so
I will talk to Grace about nailing down the election timeline.
Does that work backwards from town meeting date? Is that how the elections get done?
Our town clerk expert is saying yes.
Yes, okay. And does that have to be approved by the state, or because we're under the emergency orders, we do it without any?
You have to notify them because they create the ballots and
I see.
no, they
It's
don't create
local,
the ballots.
just,
We do
yeah.
the ballots. They tell us, I don't know, Susie?
They verify, you can figure it out. There's a book and you can figure it out, but it's good to talk to them and verify that you have all the deadlines in place.
I
And
see.
those include voter registration, but we do print our own ballot. And
Right,
we
okay.
have to be prepared for absentee. And I can imagine that was still gonna be heavily mail-in.
Right, right. Okay, and it's just town elections though this year. There's nothing else.
So it will need a firm date to work backwards from.
Yeah,
But you can make 2 pretend lines. You can figure it out twice and then pick out the one that's gonna be the real one. But it has to, it also tells us when nomination papers have to be in.
right. So we have to, the board has to vote on a date then. And then you work backwards.
Yeah, as long as it's under the state of emergency and the date can still move around, not to override the town bylaw, which is the last Saturday in April.
Right. So when would we vote? Melissa, Becky, what, is there anything stopping us from going ahead and,
voting now, you mean?
yeah,
Becky,
If
is
we
there?
vote now, I would suggest June 12th, just because I want to be sure that we have sufficient time for all the, to get information for the warrant. And it gives more time for the whole calendar of nomination papers and election.
And might I suggest also getting the tent and stuff reserved now too, if we pick a date, just so others will be doing this and we don't want to have to scramble for a large tent or a porta potty.
Yeah, I did find though, yeah, we don't know what the condition will be for large gatherings, but we were very lucky. The tents were available last time because large gatherings were not allowed. So they had a lot of cancellations.
So maybe reserve it, because you can always cancel it later as we get closer, right? If the governor changes the guidelines or whatever, but if you get on with a reserve now.
Okay, and same
just
with.
make sure you know when you can cancel it without a fee, if there is a fee within a week or a month or whatever their deadline is.
Becky, would you feel more comfortable if we wait another week to then do June 5th or June 12th?
Well, since we're meeting on Tuesday,
Okay.
Just do it then.
Or Susie, does it, do you see any issues if they just vote now?
I think you could vote now. Then you get one thing off your plate.
Right.
Yeah. One less thing.
What, do I hear a motion for holding annual town meeting on June 12th?
So moved.
Second,
All right. Any further questions or discussion? Okay. All in favor?
Farrell, I.
Dine aye.
Makepeace O'Neill, aye.
Nice.
Okay, and I'll let Janice know for the newsletter.
Mm.
And the Board of Health know for any planning they might need to do.
Right.
And well, that whole, we'll be working with Paul Lyons again and the Board of Health, and all of you guys, Finance Committee can jump in. And yeah, because it was really helpful to have a large group of people assisting in assembling and disassembling, because it was a lot to do.
And the first time through too, it also takes a little longer. We'll be professionals by the time the 12th rolls around.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of tents to take, put up, and then we don't want to leave them up overnight again. Because that's how we lost a couple legs of the tents.
Yeah, the big one would have to, but that's professionally done, so. But maybe we find out that day it'd be nice and we won't need the tents either, the other smaller ones.
Okay, that sounds good. You know, the one thing I just want to put in there, we need to make sure our moderator is available on that date.
That's true. That's true.
So I will text him right now, or email.
And I'm just thinking, I hope those aren't when we've reserved a cottage. I have to double check on that.
So can we finalize on, at our next meeting then?
Yeah,
Let's
let's
do that.
finalize. So we've semi-finalized.
Right.
Tentatively, we're setting the date for the meeting.
Right, yeah.
That's often when we go away, and I've sent out queries on a couple of cottages, and not sure which dates I had. I could switch that up. Where is that?
Becky, it does show minutes to approve minutes, but I don't think we had
They're
minutes.
not ready yet.
Okay. I was gonna say, I don't think we have them yet.
No, because it was just 2 days ago. It's June 12th.
Is there anything else we need up? We have a few minutes before 6. Is there anything else we need updates on, Becky, that we haven't had? I know we've been meeting a lot, so there probably isn't too many.
Yeah. Just trying to think through. It was a quieter day today.
Hey, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. Becky, are you gonna be in the town hall tomorrow, like after 3 at all?
Yep.
Okay, I just need to talk to you about an electrical issue. Don't worry, it's not urgent, but
Oh, Walter has already described it, and I have a call into an electrician.
awesome. All right,
Yeah.
cool.
And I don't think I've been able to describe to when you come in, I told you all that work has finally begun in my office. And so that's coming along. I no longer have a hole in the ceiling, and it's amazing. And the only major problem is that water is pouring down the outside of the chimney again. So I called the roofer on Monday. I have yet to see him. We did have a big snowstorm on Tuesday, so I'm hopeful he'll make it by tomorrow. We're keeping the chimney open so we can monitor and see it. Even with the reconstruction, the plan was to have the chimney open because I didn't want to have the new work ruined in case there was another leak. So that's another challenge moving forward.
Is
But
that
I-
chimney used for anything?
Yeah.
Sorry, what?
Is it used for any,
Furnace.
the furnace?
Yeah, the furnace is attached. You'll see it's the exhaust for the furnace.
If the
Goes up.
chimney keeps giving us a lot of trouble, maybe we think about direct venting the furnace and taking the chimney down.
Hmm.
And then sealing up the roof. Get rid of the leak. Just a thought.
Yep, nope, that's a good one. I talked to Nancy about the idea about Jamrog putting in the liner. That was one other concept. It's very expensive. It's $6,000 or $7,000, and I don't think it's a guarantee that the leaking would stop. We did put a cap on it, and it had stopped for a while. It's just
Probably leaking from some other spot then, right? Like around.
well, I think maybe the flashing has come free at this point. I'm not sure why it would have. I know Bob and Brian were, when that was what they checked when they were on the roof, and they found the flashing to be in good condition. That's why we went for the cap on the chimney. So we'll have to have them back and figure it out. But meanwhile, at least the other project doesn't have to come to a stop for that time. And the other,
I had a question. How long is our next meeting? What is it scheduled for, an hour? Or
Yep.
Sure.
yeah, I just have to leave about 10 minutes to 7 to get started on another meeting.
Okay, what we'll do is we'll make the announcement when we first start that.
Okay.
and the other thing I wanted to update you guys on as we go into this meeting is the Finance Committee asked that I request Doug Slaughter, Finance Director at the region, to include a 75% in the chart, which I did. So I haven't, I'm not sure if we'll see it ahead. We haven't seen it yet, so we probably won't see it ahead, but that request has been made.
Okay.
The Finance Committee had hoped to talk to you all about it, but if I had waited till, it wouldn't have been okay to wait till tomorrow to ask him, so. Okay.
A couple more minutes.
Yeah, 3 minutes left. Till
Go ahead.
7.
Susie?
Did you have any more computer problems or fiber problems, broadband problems?
Good question.
Yeah, Monday and Tuesday were the same, but then yesterday was fine. And this morning was fine, so.
Did they figure out what was causing it?
I think the ONT, that thing that they put on your house, inside your house was, it might be going out. And they agreed that if it happened a third time, they would replace it. So that'll be the next step if it does go out again.
Okay.
Hey, Jim.
Good afternoon or evening.
Good evening.
How is everybody?
Not too bad. How are you?
Doing well.
Good.
Yeah.
Hi, George.
Hey, George, you look retired.
Thank you for volunteering on the personnel board again, George.
Oh, you're welcome. April, the trails were awesome today.
I am on Cape Cod right now.
Oh, well, you left at the wrong time because the skiing at your house is awesome.
No, we're coming home tomorrow, but
Mhm.
it's just, the Cape in the winter is just spectacular,
Which
No
town?
snow at all here, though.
Which town are you in?
And when Wellfleet overlooking the ocean, it's been
Awesome.
delicious.
We were actually there for New Year's. Provincetown. We hiked in the dunes there in Provincetown during New Year's. It was awesome.
But the trails are good then, so I don't have to break trail.
No, trails are in great shape.
I was breaking some trail yesterday.
Down in New Boston?
No, up near where I live off of Town Farm Road.
I don't know if I know those
Look where the
trails.
Comet Trail goes.
Yeah. Where were you, George?
Behind Montague Road, I skied up to a brushy mountain today.
Oh,
nice.
oh, and it was good all the way coming.
All the way to the top. Yep.
Okay.
All the rocks were covered. The
Okay.
trail was in great shape.
Did
A lot
you
of
get-
snowmobiles have been coming by. I only saw one set, but you could tell they've been around.
Well, Jeremy Kellogg said he was going to try to groom the trails. I saw
Yeah.
him in the woods.
They did. They were in perfect shape. The snowmobiles really make them good.
We got a good thing going, don't we?
Oh, it's a
Yeah,
great,
we do.
We do.
Mm.
we live in a beautiful town.
There's a nice loop that goes all the way down to number 6 road from Brushy Mountain, and then you can come back up.
Have you done that? Because that's a really tricky trail.
Yes.
You need a lot of snow on that trail. It's just got a lot of debris, and I've done it a few times, actually.
I'll check it out.
It's in good shape. Somebody went down it. I could see it. I went by there today, and it's definitely been used.
Yeah, I'm sure it was BJ Tomlinson. That's right. We start to recognize each other's ski trails or footprints.
Well, and a snowmobiler, and I think somebody had an ATV out there too.
Really? Well,
There were tire tracks on the edge,
Wow.
and snowshoes. Everybody was out, all kinds of things.
well, that's the first good quality snow we've had, really,
It was a
Into-
couple of days before, the week before Christmas, that
Mm.
until before the rain hit. A couple of fleeting days.
I
Yeah,
was
4
seeing all
days. I
last-
remember that.
It was nice all last week. you know.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Mm.
make sure there's some snow when I get home.
Mm.
You're going to be okay. Well, it might rain tomorrow, actually.
I know. I can handle it.
Two, three. What are people rooting for on Sunday? For or against Brady?
You can't root against everyone, I don't know. See how the game goes and then figure out who to root for. Whoever's behind.
That's a good idea.
That's an approach.
Got about those Celtics last night.
They look better the night before.
They can't close. They have trouble closing out close games.
Yeah, they did it against the Warriors. But yeah, like the Lakers, they didn't. Last night they
Right.
didn't.
Lakers and Kings last night.
Yeah.
One basket difference.
Yeah, they're in these games. They just, like you say, they're not finishing.
Bruins, on the other hand, came back from a 3-1 deficit,
Yeah.
and Pasternak scored a hat trick. So
Okay, is there anyone else popping in from the two committees, school committee or finance committee?
Yeah, on the finance committee, we have 5 out of 7, and I know Jim mentioned he would be, if we were still going past 7, he wouldn't be reachable or available until 7.
We're actually hoping to finish up a few minutes before 7 so that others can make meetings if they have them. There's a few other on the calendar.
Yeah, so Jim probably won't make it. I haven't heard from Melody.
Okay. Does the school committee have everyone they were expecting? Somebody?
I know Thursdays are hard for Katie, but I'm not sure about Dan and I don't see him here.
I don't see Dan either. Okay. All right. We are headed back into another 4-town meeting. So I think we're here to share thoughts similar to what we did before. We're gonna anyone like to start on those thoughts now? I know we don't have any information yet, Becky, right? We didn't have any additional information from the last time.
You're on mute, Becky.
You're muted.
They're moving ahead with the assessment formula. I did request the 75% 5-year rolling average statutory method be added a couple days ago. So I think that will be added to the chart. That would be the only new piece of information. So my assumption is that the ball, as far as the formula goes, that will be the only change to the formula.
All right.
I noticed just a quick
Yeah,
bit
go
of info. I don't know if other folks read the same article. I saw something in, I think it was Mass Live, that said the proposed budget was $31.3 million. Did anybody else see that? I don't know if that was, it just came out.
For Amherst, you mean?
No, that would be the
Well,
whole.
no, the whole,
The Amherst
Yeah.
region.
right. But what was odd about it is is that it said that that budget would require a reduction in spending
Oh, yeah, I did see that.
864,000, which doesn't at all line up with the charts that were shown at the last Four Towns meeting, because that $31.3 million budget is $1 million roughly less than the budgets that they showed at the last meeting that were requiring cuts of 1 million and 1.4 million. So
AJ,
the
would you
article
just,
left me, thoroughly.
would you just say what that dollar amount is again, please?
31.3 million.
Thank you.
So in the charts that they shared at the last Four Towns meeting, the budget that required a $1.4 million cut was the funded budget was 32.1 million. And I'm just looking at the other one, and the budget they shared, the model they shared that required a $1 million cut was 32.5 million. So I don't know, it just didn't, the article didn't kind of line up with what was shared before, which left me a little confused. But anyway, I just thought I'd share that. Becky, you haven't seen any new
Haven't
budget
seen it.
proposal, so, okay.
Steve, have you seen it? Did you get numbers this week about the region? Hi, Steve. I can't.
I'm gonna go back and look right now and see, because I know that the one thing that we talked about was that the school committee authorized the superintendent to chop up to $1 million out of the budget. But I'll go look right now and see if there's any.
Okay. And that $1 million is going even deeper than the 32 million that was presented at the last meeting?
No, I think that we were working off of the 32, but
It could have just been an error in the reporting.
Yeah, I think it's
that
fine.
wouldn't
The
be the
newspaper is
most
usually
shocking.
wrong.
Yeah.
Jay, where did you say you saw that article?
My wife forwarded it to me. It was in Mass Live.
Okay.
And what was the number, AJ?
31.3 million.
Yeah, 1.2 less than the 1 million
Yeah.
drop they already made. Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
So I
And
don't,
that's $1 million less than last year.
yeah, so last year, I think the current budget isn't it 32,145,000? Yeah.
But AJ said it, that's like 840 less than last year.
Yeah. So maybe what they were saying is that it was an $800,000, I don't know, yeah. So maybe it's just this, maybe this is another situation where there's confusion between the language of cuts from a level funded budget versus a level services budget.
Yeah, let's not worry about that. I think Susie's hand.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like we can't take something from the newspaper and we'll have to, as much as we don't want to have to wait, I think we have to wait for the school to give us numbers. Because
Yeah.
newspapers are not always giving the framework clearly.
Or nor do they understand it necessarily.
So I do want to say that the Finance Committee spent about an hour on this issue at their last meeting. So
Maybe they can fill us in on their conversation.
I think you guys need to call yourselves in order first.
Oh, yes, please. I'm sorry. I forgot that piece.
It's okay.
Okay,
Thank you, April.
we can call the Finance Committee meeting to order. We have 5 out of our 7 members present.
School committee, do you have enough to call yourselves to order?
Dan, you're muted.
Yes, there is a quorum, so I will call the school committee to order at 6:10.
All right. Does the finance committee want to fill us in on your conversation that you had the other day or your last meeting?
Yeah, we did spend, was it an hour? It seemed like 2 hours, Becky. Are you sure it was only an
just one.
hour?
It was 10 o'clock when he finally stopped. So
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so we spent a lot of time. We heard a lot of different viewpoints, and we talked about at least going forward for a position. Going forward, we felt that we need to get to at least a 65% to 65% statutory this go around. We also talked about using negotiation figures versus where we need to end up type of figures. And so we don't want to separate what we want to put out there with regard to negotiation versus where we think we need to end up. But after, like I say, a lot of discussion, we think we need to be at 65% statutory. And then we can always talk about tactics or whatever we may or may not have to use to get there during this next meeting with Town, or if we'll probably have at least a couple more meetings, right? There'll be one this Saturday and maybe at least one more by the end of February, or
it depends on whether there's expectations of information changing from what we have, and also whether the 4 towns can come together on anything.
yeah. We also asked if Becky could check with Doug in Amherst to see whether they could look at a 75% scenario, statutory scenario. And Becky, sounds like Doug is working on that.
Yep.
And he should have something for us to look at on Saturday, because we'd like to get a better sense for exactly what does 75% statutory look like. There was also some discussion about protecting the budget. There was 2 scenarios that were presented at the last 4 town meeting that happened in, it was at early December.
Yep.
One showed 1 million below what would be required to deliver level services. And there was one that 1.4 million under what would be required to deliver level services. So we had some discussion that we'd rather maintain the 1 million under as opposed to going deeper than that, just to maintain the quality of schooling that we think is needed. And the last point I think we agreed on, and someone speak up if I have anything mixed up here, but we talked about aiming or getting to 100% statutory by 2023. So I think that's what I recorded as our general consensus from our FinCom discussion at our last meeting last week.
Jay, I saw your hand at one point. Did you still want to make a comment?
No, that was a great summary.
Susie?
I think that the time frame question was still left open because we can say that's what we're headed towards, and that's what we're working towards 100%. But in terms of time frame, I don't believe we came up with a clear edict or negotiating position, and it's not clear that I'm not sure whether they can commit to something like that.
Jim.
Yeah, and I think even if we all agreed that it was 2023 and we presented that and people nodded their heads, these discussions are only locked in for a year, as I understand them, right? So even everybody nods their heads in consensus on Saturday or a subsequent meeting, we still need to sit down a year from now and go through the same exercise again, right? So.
Because I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Bob, and then.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I agree with everything, Jim's summary there, but just to make it slightly expand on it, I think we felt that stating that that is our position would be important to give a sense of urgency to the other towns. I think that was we know that we can't get a binding commitment from them, that we're going to have to go back on this, but we have to, at least represent our town and say that we try to be patient and considerate of other points of view, but it's been a long time and we want to draw a line under this and then be done with it. So I think it'd be good to establish that. I think that's our goal, not that we expect it to be written down or in any way committed, but it's something we wanted to say, I believe. Is that not true?
I think that's what I heard.
That's what I heard.
George.
Yeah, so we know we're going into a negotiation. We want to try to get them to go. We're going to ask for 75, 65. If they agree to go to the 100%, I mean, this is just some of our conversation. If they were to agree to go to the 100% in 23 or 24, we might be willing to go down to 55 or 45% with that commitment. So, we kind of have to, I think we have to see how the meeting goes and kind of go with that. The one thing that we did, we noticed when we were looking at the numbers, and by the way, I did calculate the 75%. I have that number, and I put together a quick spreadsheet and have an analysis. I could show it to everybody if you're interested in seeing it. But what we noticed was to stay at the 45% method this year at $1 million decrease in budget. I'm just going to jump to it, make sure I get my facts straight. The $1 million decrease budget, if we stay at the 45%, that's a $552,000 increase for Amherst. And for us, it's a decrease of about $10,000, call it. So it's a big jump for Amherst. And what's really interesting is if we went to 100% this year, Amherst's number would be 650 versus the 552, call it 550. So the increment of staying at the method we're at is 550,000. To go from the 45% to the 100% method is only an additional 100,000. So it's going to be really hard to get Amherst, I think, to go even for the 45%. I think Becky or somebody had mentioned early on that Amherst said we're level funding, so Shutesbury is going to have to think about, what method we're using. And I can see why they would say that with these numbers.
George, can you share the spreadsheet? I think
Yes,
that
I'd
would
be
be
happy
really
to.
helpful.
Yeah, if you can I just take it?
You might be able to. Does it give you?
Oh, no, I gotta.
Yeah, it says here I'm disabled. Yeah.
Here, I'm making you a co-host.
And why is it such a dramatic, why is it $500,000?
That's a good question. So here's the $1 million method. Everybody can see this, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Here's the $1 million method. So I'm just going to open these up real quick. Give me a second here. I realize that this happened. So what I've got here is, these are all right off of the PDF. This is last year's budget. This is this year's budget at the 45% method, which of course what last year's was, that's an increase in the budget of 613. Okay. And then at 55%, 65 or 100%, and then the full statutory is over here. So I'm going to hide what the budgets are and just talk about the increases.
Mm-hmm.
So these would be the increases from method to method for Amherst and for us. And this is what's going to be really hard for Amherst. If we got them to commit, I'm just throwing this out, if we got them to commit to 2023 as 100%, then to get there, assuming the budgets were flat, which of course they're not, but let's just say they were, right? They would need half of this year, a 320 increase, a 300, call it 325. Well, 325 increase is less than the 45% method. And if we go less than the 45% method, I don't know, I didn't do the numbers backward, but if we went to 35%, we probably pay a little more than we're paying this year, maybe by 10,000, I don't know. But for the select board's benefit and the school committee, when the finance committee was talking about it, this is really what we recognize. This big jump, just by staying at the same level, it's relatively modest to move from there and upwards. It's getting here that's the real problem.
Bob, go ahead.
I just want to speculate here, but there's a reason why that if we stay with the same model at 45, that Amherst assessment goes up $550,000. That is independent from the modest increase in 613, I think, in the budget. It has to do with enrollment or some other factor, I'm sure. We could ask about this at the meeting, but that's independent from our assessment method, and we shouldn't be taking the heat for that jump. That jump is related to other factors. And I think, personally, I think that we agreed as a committee that we had a drop dead number of 65%, which is really not that far from that number, George. It's only, looking at your numbers here, it's only $35,000. So that's minuscule when you look at in the context of the general budget of Amherst. So
I'm not taking a position on this. I just want to find.
I'm just
I want
saying that
everybody to
really, if you look
understand
at,
that this is.
I think that we have to ask the question of why that jump is there, but I think that's probably due to enrollment factors or some other factor that's independent from the method of assessment. It has.
So this has to do with, I'm sorry, I didn't raise my hand.
That's okay, go ahead.
Yeah, George, you're comparing fiscal year 21 to fiscal year 22.
Yes.
Right, and you're comparing a level services budget for 22, which would be about 33.5 million minus 1 million.
This is
Which gets it down to
this isn't
32
level services. This is the $1 million decrease budget that they showed us.
No, hear me out. And we end up $1 million lower, so that ends up being 32.5 million for fiscal year 22. And that's still $400,000 higher than where they ended up in 21. So this is like to Bob's point, this has nothing to do with the methodology. It's just that the overall, if we look at the $1 million reduced budget, we're still about $500,000 higher than where we were last year.
Yeah, because of all these things.
But
No, and all of what things, George?
So on my screen is the handout they gave us, and they're showing where they're going to have increases, where they're having loss of increases mostly, but I think loss of revenue items too. And it's all these things. The health insurance is a big one. They also had to cut the amount of money they can use out of the EDD account because it's running low. Last year, they used $500,000. It's in here somewhere. And this year, yeah, right here. So they're using 400 this year out of the EDD. They use 515. So there is a lot going on, and it'll be interesting to see how they change this. But I just wanted to point out, this is part of the reason why it's going up 613,000, even though they're cutting $1 million, right? They're making it $1 million lower. These are the things that are happening. And then there's Bob's point, which, yeah, I agree, Bob. We need to ask them, how is this happening? What is causing this? And I was talking to somebody who's really knowledgeable on this subject, the wise guy, I'll call him, who knows this. He was saying, well, if Amherst is going to lose all this income in fiscal 21 and even fiscal 22, how's that going to affect their statutory in the long run? Because the statutory method is based on income. That means that they're probably going to get more aid in the years coming up. And I don't know how that's going to affect us and the other three towns if they start doing better at statutory, which I thought was a really interesting observation. I don't know that it really plays into any of this conversation, but I thought I'd share that thought. That was one thing we hadn't considered when we were talking. And again, that would be 2 to 3 years out, because I think they check the income of the towns every 2 years. But anyways, this is going to be, I think this is going to be really tricky, because if Amherst is willing to come up to here, bringing them over to here shouldn't be a big deal. It's just two of these. It's $35,000. It's getting them here in negotiations, in the conversation, in the fight. I think this is what is going to be a real sticky point.
I have a question.
Rita?
Has anybody analyzed the governor's budget and some of the changes there to see what impact that might have on the regional school budget? I just saw one summary. The only thing I recall from it was about regional transportation, being reimbursement being decreased. But I'm just curious about the impact of the budget, state budget.
Would this be helpful?
I sent something to Becky and AJ that does have a little bit of that information on it.
One thing I noticed today was the preliminary cherry sheet. Their income goes down by, the income to the region goes down by over 200,000.
Right. Susie, or I saw Jim's hand at one point and now Susie. Jim, did you have any other comment before Susie?
Yeah, I guess the only point I was going to make is we were for the fiscal year 2021, we all 4 towns agreed to a 45% statutory. And yeah, I guess from my perspective, we didn't get into this too much during our last meeting, but I'd be concerned about any discussion about going backwards on that. Yeah, there is a hit for Amherst for this year if to stick with 45% allocation, or excuse me, statutory. But it's not because of the methodology. It's increases. It's increased cost. It's increased cost this year. There's a level services budget right now that's proposed for 22, and even at $1 million reduced below that, the actual total budget is higher by well over $500,000 than it was last year, and that's what we're seeing reflected in Amherst's increase.
Susie.
All of the governor reports showed lower revenues and higher charges, all of them, all 4 towns.
Thank you.
Do I need to share, or can I stop?
You can, does anyone still want to look at the sheet on the screen? Raise your hand if you do. Ajay?
I just had a comment. So
Okay, George, you take it down.
I'm sorry?
Go ahead. You can take it down if you want. Ajay, go ahead.
So Steve shared, looks like their budget updated as of February 2nd, and it is basically $32 million. Interestingly, the jump, George, from FY21 to the 45% statutory for FY22 is now about $220,000, not the 500,000 or so.
That's not the 1.5.
No, this is the $1 million.
Oh, that's great news.
So they're new numbers now, basically. I don't know what's changed, but.
Where those come from, AJ? Where do these numbers?
Steve just shared them minutes ago. I can share it if.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Wow.
Becky, can you make Ajay or were you going to send it to Jay or put it on the screen? What would you prefer?
I'll make it a co-host if you want.
Okay. Yeah, sure. I can share. I've got it up right now.
I'm trying to forward Steve's email to everybody.
Susie, go ahead while he's pulling that up.
I think that it's very hard to deal with the numbers, even though we're only 2 days out from the meeting. And I think that the FinCom came to a position, even though we did recognize there are a lot of factors that Amherst is going to bring to the table. And I think my feeling is that this is not the final session. I think it's going to be important to continue to say Shutesbury expects to get to 100% statutory. And I think our group wanted to present at Saturday's meeting that we would, we understand ourselves, we'd like to be at 65%, but we might be asking for 75%. But I feel like trying to have this be a settled idea without being at the negotiations of Saturday is not particularly helpful. To understand our position and then to go to Saturday open to listening to what else is out there from both the governor's budget and from what the Amherst is just deciding or offering.
Yeah, this is really interesting here. This shows that the operating budget's $500,000 lower than when we met in early December. So, and that Amherst gets a big chunk of that the benefit of that lower budget.
So going back, I'm sorry, I just want to mention, going back to Rita's question earlier on the state budget's impact on the region. One item of benefit for Amherst is the UGA coming in at full 3.5% increase this year. And Amherst gets a few million. So that's a significant and helpful thing for them. It was one of the items that they noted that they were very worried about getting cut, but it was not cut.
Can you remind us what UGA is?
It's the unrestricted old lottery aid. It's,
okay.
It's a 30% lottery and then revenue from other sources that historically has been dedicated to the 351 cities and towns in the Commonwealth.
Right. Just to expand on that, Becky, what was reported through Becky to the FinCom earlier in this whole process was that the state was talking about redistributing that UGA money so that towns in need would get more and Amherst would get less, which we thought would put a lot of stress on Amherst's budgeting process because that's a hell of a lot of money. Turns out that it was restored in its entirety or maybe even expanded. So they've got this money now, this revenue, that is a relief from potential stress that they had anticipated. Is that correct, Becky?
I think we were talking about the ed reform impact on chapter 70. All the new education discussion. So I don't think that there's been a proposed change to UGA.
Oh, really?
But everything you described was in place, a concern about chapter 78. So I agree with your whole concept. I just think it goes to chapter 70 and not UGA.
Tell me if I'm mistaken, but from what I've been reading from the state is that they expect to hold harmless chapter 78. Is that true?
They're committing to that for FY22, yes.
Okay, so that is another issue that was of concern that has been seemingly resolved amicably or, without changing Amherst circumstances in a bad way.
Yep, so that's two beneficial things that they had great concern about.
And those were talking points when we started this discussion about the statutory.
Yep. So they should be in better shape than they anticipated at the last meeting.
But how about according to this, what we're seeing here?
This would imply that Amherst is a lot better shape. They're $300,000 in better shape.
Yeah, no, I'm saying, is there an update to these numbers, which were done on the 2nd, looks like?
No, I don't think.
Do you think they incorporated everything? Everything's been incorporated here.
Except for the 75%.
Right, okay. But all the state monies, the additional revenues.
Right here in the thing.
Yep, they
are reflected here.
Well, yeah. Not all of them because they don't all go, like the UGA goes into their individual cherry sheet. It's not going to show up as budget revenue on this budget because the district is a separate entity.
AJ, would you be able to expand this, hit the plus button and grow it? Zoom in a little?
Oh, yeah.
Does
Thank
that
you.
make a difference? Yeah. Okay.
Oh, yeah. So if I may,
Yeah,
I
go
would
ahead.
agree with what Susie said, just let them know that, and we as a finance committee already said that. It's interesting here, again, it's small increments from 45 to 55 to 65, and even the jump 45 to 45 is so much more reasonable. So looking at this scenario, I am totally comfortable with wanting to go about this. That's me personally.
Yeah, because
Go ahead, Becky. What were you gonna say?
now Leverett was going to pay a little bit more, but they're reading into the negative to the 55, and they only, they're negative through 65% now. So Leverett shouldn't have an issue with 65 at all.
And Pelham already said they'd be fine with the 65.
And even at 100%, Leverett is a 0.43% increase. It's $20,000.
Jim?
Sorry, Melissa.
That's okay. I was looking at those spreadsheet on my screen. Jim, go ahead.
Yeah, just a general question. I don't recall seeing, for the 4 town meetings, are the minutes typically taken for these meetings? I haven't seen minutes in the past.
No, the minutes need to be taken by the individual groups that go, Finance Committee and Select Board, but they typically aren't. What they generally rely on is the recording. The issue is, like, even if the body were to take a vote, it's not a recognized body. The only authorities that exist are the individual select boards, individual finance committees, individual school committees. And then you've got the regional school committee, who hopefully is listening to these meetings, who are they are the ones responsible for this decision. So we're making a lot of noise. They're supposed to listen. That's why they don't record the votes, because we're not we're a conglomerate of different bodies.
So any agreements aren't really documented anywhere. Any agreements between the 4 towns aren't documented.
Correct. There have not, correct, because even the amendments, even the formulas that we're looking at for the region assessment formula, those are initiated by the regional school committee. So this is a cooperative relationship where the superintendent makes sure that the regional school committee members can take actions, understanding the thinking of their town officials.
Becky, though, isn't it, if it's televised by ACTV, it must have a recording somewhere.
Oh, yeah, it's recorded. It's not, but
not in the formal way of
recorded.
minutes like Jim is asking, but.
Yeah, because last year or 2 years ago, we tried to find minutes of the vote that we all recalled during a straw vote on wanting to make it a 2-year deal. And there was no recording of that straw vote.
Susie.
I have a different position on strategy. I am not a person who believes in throwing out a high number so you can get a lower number. That's not my strategy. But what I will say is, with this chart and looking at the numbers, we could go into the meeting saying that we want that we heard people, we heard John Trickey say Pelham would be willing to go 55 or 65, and we'd like to go 65 because that's what we heard, and that's headed towards where we want to go. And that attitude strikes me as much more cooperative and a better negotiating tactic.
Anybody else have some thoughts, Jim?
Yeah, I guess I disagree on that. I think it's our responsibility to present Shutesbury's point of view, and Shutesbury's perspective is we want 100%. So if we're going to put something out there, I think we could make a case to put 100% statutory out there. It's in our best interest. But my point is, every town has their own interests, and they're all going to put, I think, their own interests out earlier on. I think if we start with where we think or hope the end game is, I think it's likely we go down from there. I just think it's, at least based on my experience, it's we've got 4 different groups that all have their own perspective on what's best for them, and they're going to start with presenting that, I do believe. And it's the reason for these meetings is to get to some consensus somewhere in between that meets all 4 towns' needs. That's just my opinion.
Bob? Bob, you have to unmute yourself.
Sorry, just to support what Jim was saying and to respond to what Susie stated, I don't think we're going to just be throwing out a wild high number and to try to use that as a ploy to accept later, to accept some other number that we really want. It's more like I think we can reasonably ask for 75% at this meeting, knowing that that's an incremental change going towards our goal. Considering all the interest of the other towns, we'd be willing to ask for 75% this year, and be willing then to consider, we have a drop dead number that we say we're not going to drop below of 65%. I think we can make a really good case asking for 75%. Looking at the spreadsheet, looking at the increment from 45 to 65 is not that great a burden to the other towns. It puts us approximately halfway there. And I think it's a good number. I think it's a very reasonable ask for us to do that. But we should, and we planned on agreeing that we would be willing to negotiate that number lower if that's what was necessitated by the vibe in the meeting. So that's not, it's not, I don't think that's really being dishonest or in bad faith to be prepared to change our number if the situation calls for it.
Okay. George, Leslie, George.
Well, I was just going to say, I agree that ultimately, for me, it's always been, how do we get to the statutory, the 100% method within 2 or 3 years? And it seems to me, if we do any of these here, we're very close to it. And so the difference between 45, 55, and 65, yeah, I agree. We need to listen and hear what Amherst really says before we really throw something out other than we want to get to 100%. But I'd be fine with any of these because they all bring us within $100,000, and a $100,000 increase wouldn't be bad. So I think I honestly think looking at this, it feels like 23, we could be at 100%. My other question is though, I'm just curious, are we going to hear before our time runs out the opinions of the select board based on what you've heard from us?
Yeah, because Rita only has a few minutes.
Yeah. Rita, do you want to start since you have a few minutes in case the conversation goes a little longer?
Sure. Yeah. So we asked the finance committee asked that Amherst prepare the 75%. I'd be comfortable in going in with that requesting 75. Not really as a negotiating, but really where we'd like to be. And if they push back, then we have to consider that. But I don't think it's unreasonable to ask for that. And we have asked for them to present those numbers to us. So I would support that, with the caveat that we want to get to 100% very quickly. But that we would accept 75% this next fiscal year.
I agree with you, Rita. And I think, sort of building on what Susie said, there is support in the room for at least the 65% and most likely the 75%. The Pelham has been, they're taking the biggest hit, I think. And that they're prepared for that. And I don't think it's unreasonable. The numbers, the 75% numbers are probably not going to be a huge difference for all of us.
Yeah.
So let's try it.
Yeah, I also do agree, and asking for 75 feels like we're doing our due diligence to our taxpayers. And then if we have to settle at 65, we know that's okay too. So I do agree with both of you. Jim.
Just a comment regarding Pelham, and we look at these numbers and they pick up a lot. But I think where Pelham, and my interpretation when Tricky talked about this at the last meeting, they've already absorbed most of that. Most of that hit comes between the 45% statutory from 21 and moving to 45% statutory in 22. So they're absorbing most of that already by staying at 45%. So from their perspective, going to another, $6,000 over to get to 65% is not a big deal.
Dan, I saw your hand, and then Becky and Leslie.
Okay. I'm only one school committee member, but my position would be, I appreciate all of the comments, but I do agree that our goal is 100%. At least the 75 should be what we're trying to strive for in this meeting. And it does look like that it's doable. So that would be my position as a school committee member. I'm not sure how the other school committee members feel.
Becky?
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to say the difference between the 45% for Pelham and the 100% is $8,000.
Yeah.
I mean, in many ways, for Leverett, it's more significant. Is that right?
Yeah.
About
Yeah.
6,000 for Leverett.
How much?
More than that.
30.
Oh,
Am I looking at the wrong line?
Yeah, you were.
Oh, yeah, I am looking at the wrong line. Yeah.
So it's a $30,000 change for Leverett. So it appears that Pelham is starting to benefit from statutory.
And then Leslie, and then Jim.
No, I'm good. But
You're
you're on mute. You're on mute, Leslie.
Hear me now?
No, you hit it again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Well, hopefully I'm reading this chart better than I muted or unmuted my voice here. Just nobody has mentioned this, so I'm going to mention it. If I read these numbers correctly, if Shutesbury, if we went to the 100% this coming fiscal year, we would have a savings of $135,000. That's what 100% statutory would mean to the taxpayers and citizens of Shutesbury. Just wanted to throw that out.
Thank you. Anybody else want to make a comment at all? Oh, Becky?
Could we ask all the school committee members to share their
Oh,
feelings?
yes, I'm sorry.
We did hear from Dan.
Raise your hand, or you can, okay, go ahead, Lauren.
My thinking is that, as we're moving toward the 100%, that we should move there as quickly as we can. And that when we're looking at these numbers, the burden on other towns is not nearly what it has been in past years. So it seems like a good time to be trying to make those larger steps.
Yeah. Steve, Jen, Melody, you guys want to offer? Go ahead, Jen.
Generally, I would agree with what Lauren and Dan have said. I also, I am also committed to not having really deep cuts to the young people in the schools. So I would just put that out as a caveat to moving as quickly as we can.
Anybody else? Rita, you want to?
I'm leaving.
Okay. Thank you for coming.
Okay.
Anybody else want to weigh in at all? Jim?
Yeah, Jen makes a good point about trying to maintain the level. And like I said earlier, the FinCom talked about recommending the 1 million reduction from the level services, but that's changed now that there's another 500,000 removed from the cost of level services. Do we need to reconsider how we position what we're looking for there as far as the total budget?
Jay and Bob.
Yeah, just Jim, I feel like it's impossible for me to answer that without knowing what the superintendent's thinking is about where those cuts are coming from and what's changed since the last budget that was shared. So I think it's just, I think we have to hear from them about kind of where at this point where they see those cuts coming from and what they think the impact is going to be, and if that's any different from where it was back in December.
Bob.
Yeah, I just want to support what AJ is saying. I think it's impossible for us to judge this budget when we don't know what's changed to bring the number down. It could be something that we would support that doesn't affect services, because I thought that what we as a committee wanted to see was the services to the students being maintained. If there was a way that they cut the number down through salaries or through some other savings that we don't really know about yet, that didn't affect services directly, then we would certainly support bringing the number down. That's savings. If it's a savings that we can support, I expect that we would. But we can't judge this number without knowing what it represents.
George.
AJ, is there another page with another budget on it?
See, no, sorry, there was only one budget model.
Okay, so they're not even presenting the 1
So
point.
yeah, so I mean, I think the good news is that they've taken that $1.4 million cut off the table, looks like.
You're going to send this to all of us, right?
I did. I forwarded the email about half an hour ago.
Oh, good, because that, this schedule is going to have what I'm sure it's going to have.
Yeah,
good-
I'm sure there's a cut list.
Yeah.
I can't open mine. I'm not sure why,
Let's
but
see. I'm just
Thank you,
scrolling
Alex.
through it. But
here it is.
oh, here. I think this is the key. These are the key bullet points about the budget cut.
Okay.
Wow, 16 positions.
So that's it right there. It's staffing.
Yeah, it looks like they got money from the CARES Act too.
Mhm.
So it's staffing, administrative staffing. So, that's interesting.
Well, the paras, and I don't know what professional staff is, but yeah.
Maybe your counselors and stuff. It doesn't really define it, but
Mhm.
or maybe not. That's just a guess.
but the bigger question is, do these 16 FTE reductions impact programs? Steve, did they talk about that last night?
No, we just ran through it like this. We didn't get into the nitty gritty details because they won't talk about those because that impacts people and that's personnel. And so we can't even talk about that at the school committee.
What's interesting is there's one page on here, if I may,
Go ahead.
there's one page on here that shows an increase of 864,000. AJ, that's the number you quoted, right?
Yes.
And what they're showing for the projected budget is not 31.3, but 33 even. Yeah, I don't know if you're on there right now. I'm looking at my own.
Susie.
I see on this list of reductions, staff reductions primarily tied to reductions in student enrollment. Is that going to impact the state aid? Or is that already projected?
Question.
I remember from the last meeting, they did have a number of students that were, had gone to charter or private schools because parents needed them to be able to, students in class. But I remember that being COVID related, and they didn't know if they would come back after. Don't know if that helps your question, Susie, but I remember that being said.
So the state hasn't decided yet with the Chapter 70 whether towns will be held harmless for all of their students that have chosen to homeschool and leave the districts. That's still up in the air.
We know what that amount might be.
I do not.
There looks like there's a fairly substantial reduction in special ed services, and I was wondering if that was talked about at all.
Steve, I think we're asking you.
So if there's a drop in special ed costs, it would be because of losing a out of district placement.
Okay.
Somebody may have aged out.
Big number, 30. Do we know what the control accounts are? Because that's a 205 increase. Go tell us.
Yeah, they'll go through it.
So it sounds like we're prepared to go, to go to this meeting with open minds and clear direction about what we want.
Mhm.
I don't hear a lot of disagreement.
I don't either. Are we ready to head in there on Saturday morning?
I'd like, where's Melody? I think we need some Bernie mittens.
Who's going to present?
That's a good question. I guess the first part will be listening, right? So we usually present after our breakout session.
Yeah.
Jim, do you feel comfortable presenting?
I'm okay with that. If
I think you'd be
I'm
good.
okay, I'm okay with a lot of us. I think a lot of us would do just fine.
Mhm. Do you volunteer?
Good to keep them guessing.
I'd be happy to. I'd be happy to, Dan.
Becky does have the breakout room information on the website listed as a select board meeting at 10 a.m. Right, Becky? Just so everybody knows where that is.
Yeah, and but there's also all three boards will have a meeting. I'm gonna have it open at 9 a.m. despite that, because the meeting was posted at 9 a.m. But the way I had to do the breakout sessions, you'll see that, but it will open at 9.
Yeah.
And all three committees will be going into the same Zoom link. And that is only for those members.
George.
I was going to say, I've got an invitation for February 6th at 9:30.
That's for the breakout.
Okay, I went through this wonderful mechanics of our new posting system with the select board. The short version is there, the main meeting was already posted legally. That has everybody in it, but the Shutesbury, what's on our calendar, we needed the individual postings because I can't do a posting for all 3 committees at one time like I used to do. And when I did them, they didn't allow me to do the 9:30 for the select board. It went in at 10. But there's only going to be one Zoom link that I don't know what time they're going to have us go into the breakout session. So I'm going to have it open at 9 o'clock just to be good. And that's, again, that's that's not restricted. Everybody will be able to go in there from Shutesbury. It's an open meeting on that part. But the main meeting with the 100 people is not an open meeting to the public, but it is visible and viewable. And that information is on the website where you can go online to watch the main meeting. So for interested parties, they can go online to see that. You'll know when the committees go into a breakout, and you'll have the breakout link on the individual committee agendas.
Becky, why don't you, for those that'll be attending in the meeting, maybe send us an email with a subject of breakout for Saturday, so we can have it just easily to click in our email, just to make it more efficient, because we're switching meetings.
Yep.
And then have to go back. Does that make okay sense?
Yep, I will do that.
Right. Bob?
I assume we're going to meet before the general meeting starts. So what time do we show up for our breakout meeting, our initial breakout meeting?
I didn't post a pre-meeting this time because we were meeting tonight so close to the meeting.
Yeah, I don't.
So what time do we show up then? And what time
9,
do we click?
9.
5 of 9.
Yeah, I don't think we need to meet beforehand. I think we're good.
I think the answer to Bob's question is Mike Morris's invitation is where we show up.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then Becky's going to send out when it's time to go in the breakout sessions. That's where we're all going to go.
Yeah. But it will also be on the calendar so other people can come into the breakout session.
Good.
So can I just maybe follow up with one thing with Jim perhaps, and well, everybody here is it appears that we continue to strive towards 100%. And I think that's, I'm not sure, Jim, how you want to approach a strategy. I think to Susie's point, I don't think it's, to me, it's in good faith negotiating sort of what we're hoping for and what we're looking for, which is 100%. I think that we're willing to look at those numbers, but I'm just thinking, it looks like we're certainly willing to go down to the 75, maybe even lower with a caucus or something. But I think we're all looking for the 100%, and as it's been pointed out by Lauren and others, the difference isn't so big between where we are with the 45 to the 100. So I don't know if that sums up thoughts here or how you want to approach it, but I just wanted to say something like that.
Just make sure I heard you. When you say 100%, we're talking about getting to 100% within a couple years, right? And that we think we need to get to, maybe, and again, there's going to be breakouts and there's going to be different. Mm-hmm. Who knows the structure of this meeting, whether they'll even be looking for specific allocations this meeting. We don't know that yet. I mean, we need to be prepared for that.
Right.
But I think we suggested proposing 75%, getting to 75% for this year, for fiscal year 22.
Mm-hmm.
And that we need to be at 100%. I think, was it April, maybe you, April, and Rita mentioned that we need to be at 100% soon. We didn't specify what soon meant.
Right.
I think some people might think that's another year farther down, or some others might think it's 2 years. How clear do we want to be on what soon means?
Well, if I could just say one more thing, I think, Jim, many of us have been involved with this for a long period of time.
Yeah.
And for me personally, I kind of feel like I can't believe we're not at 100%
Yeah.
at this point.
Yeah.
So I kind of feel like we should approach it as, you know, we need to be at 100%, and then see where it goes from there.
We need to be 100% for this discussion for this coming fiscal year. Is that what you're?
I'm thinking we need to be at 100%, and the discussion should begin. That's where we want to be starting this year. That's where we've been wanting, that's where we've been striving to get to. I think then the negotiations begin, you know, how can we help assist in the transition between, you know, if they feel like they want to do it over a 1 year or 2 year or 3 year, but I would approach it that, you know, we want to be at 100%.
Okay, that's a little different from where we were at the finance committee, but you know what, maybe who else?
It's a lot
Other
different.
thoughts?
I think we're all willing to go the direction backwards, but I think to begin with by saying, well, we're starting at the 75%, I think we should go in saying, we've been working toward this for many years. We really want to be at the 100%, but we're here to try to work in good faith and negotiate somewhere in between, you know. I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah.
Well, and why don't we wait until, you know, we'll have the general meeting to begin with, and then we will caucus, and we can certainly talk about the fine points.
Yeah.
I feel like we've talked this through pretty thoroughly.
I agree. Mike.
Yeah, I appreciate that you have talked this through quite a bit, but I appreciate even more that there's several members here that are concerned about being at 100% sooner rather than later. And even though there's been a lot of discussion about starting at 75 and seeing where it goes and everything, I'm with Dan. I mean, it's now's, you know, now's the time. Several people have said that financially, economically, the situation we're in right now, the jumps from 65 to 75 to 100% are not that great. And you know, I think this is a window of opportunity where we ought to take advantage of it. And again, I agree with Dan that ought to go into it strongly with 100%. And be very clear that that's what the town's position is. Thanks.
Leslie. Gotta unmute yourself. Les.
Okay. You know, I've heard several people say, well, it's not that much of a stretch from 45 to 65, 75 to 100% for the other towns. I just want to repeat what I tried to say before, that might not be such a big stretch for the other towns, but for us, it's $135,000. And I think that's a very significant improvement in our position. Just it's talking about 100% and talking about $135,000 in our coming fiscal budget is a big deal. It might not be a big deal for the increments for the other towns, but I think it's a big deal for us. Thanks.
Thank you, Leslie. Lauren.
I think I'd just like to come back to what Jen said, and that I personally am for moving forward as quickly as we can, given that this has been such a long process. But what are the consequences? We have to go through the meeting to find out what the consequences are for the different, for what we're willing to accept. So to me, that has to be part of the discussion before we can come to whatever our final decision is.
We get to hear that on Saturday morning, right? So, okay. Does anybody have any final comments before we all adjourn and meet back on Saturday? No? Okay. Oh, Becky.
Sorry, I guess I just wanted to add that when we do the breakout session, we're making sure it's viewable to the public. But at the same time, I think what we did last time was we are listening on that day only to committee members, because that's already almost 20 people.
Yep.
And I just want to to just make that clear before Saturday, that if you're not, all we're listening now, people understand I believe others positions that aren't on committees, but because of the complication of trying to talk things through with 17 people in a 10-minute stretch, that breakout will need to be focused, but you'll be able to listen and know what's going on.
Okay. Maybe. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Well, one comment, Jim came late. Jim, go ahead.
Yes. Getting a COVID vaccination is fun, I want to assure you all. And down at Cooley Dickinson, at least, I don't know about the other places, but what time are we meeting Saturday morning?
We're heading right into the four-town meeting. We're not having a pre-meeting like we have.
Oh, so it's 9 o'clock, and
Yeah.
essentially, I didn't know whether there was some change there, perhaps.
No, and Becky's going to email us out the breakout room too, Jim, so we'll be able to have that.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
You don't look any worse for the wear, Jim.
Well,
Congratulations.
it may take a while for the drug to kick in.
Is it your first or your second dose?
That's my first.
It's the second dose has been hitting people.
Yeah, that's why I understand that's the meteor one. That's in 3 weeks' time. But at least it went efficiently and somewhat cheerfully there at Cooley Dickinson. That I can assure you.
Nice to hear. All right, so I will close out the
Becky.
school committee is adjourned.
Who do you know?
Does the finance committee want to adjourn themselves?
Yep. If all in agreement, the finance committee is also wrapping up and adjourning.
I agree.
Sounds good.
The select board, we're going to stay on forever, right?
Oh, no, you're not. I have the off switch, guys.
So I'll
Bye,
move it
everyone.
and vote to adjourn.
Okay. All in favor?
Thank you, everyone.
Aye,
See you
aye, aye.
Saturday.
See you Saturday.
Jim, it's usually you and I. Good night, Jim. Good night,
Well,
Steve.
I'm slow on the mouse here. That's the problem, I guess.
Well, I
And
hope
it-
you have a good evening. My mom didn't have a reaction, so I'm hoping you don't either.
Well, I'm told that the second one is the one that is more dramatic, perhaps. So I'll have to wait and see. But at least it's been done,
Yes,
which is
very
good.
good.
All right. Good luck. See you Saturday morning.
Yes. Good night.
Bye-bye.